Hey Devin, how's it going? Thanks
Hey,
for chatting with me today.
yeah, looking forward to it.
I'm talking to you because you make this app called Crouton, and you've been working on this app for I think over 5 years now, right? So what's the current pitch nowadays? Like, how do you explain or introduce Crouton?
I think I've got it down to like one or two sentences after 5 years. Basically, Crouton's a safe place for all of your recipes from wherever you find them, whether that's websites, cookbooks, or just a scribbled note from your grandma. Yeah, once they're in there, it's easy to do your meal planning and shopping lists and all the good stuff.
There you go, and you know, it's an indie darling. At least, for me, I love Crouton. I love that
It's very
app.
kind.
What was the origin story for this? Because you started doing this like as a side thing, right? What I remember, like I think the first time I don't think the app was even out yet, but it was on Twitter. Rest in peace. And I think you started sharing some. Was it like some interactions or something, or just like some mock-ups or some? I remember seeing something like some screens that look really good, but I think we were still working on it. I haven't launched it yet. What's the origin story of this app?
So I've always, I guess, enjoyed cooking. I'm not like particularly amazing, I don't think, but I just like, cooking dinner every night. And when I moved out and got married, I started doing a lot of meal planning, just to so I was prepared about what I was going to cook each night. And I was just using the Notes app. The Notes app is actually, I think, a pretty good place to start a lot of apps.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just had the days of the week, and then underneath just like a huge list of links to websites and even just like the names of some recipes. And so then at the start of each week, I would like copy and paste them up next to the day of the week.
Okay.
And it was pretty good. It got the job done. But once that list got like pretty long, it did get a bit unwieldy. And around that time, I'd also gotten a job as a junior iOS developer. So I was learning app development and really enjoying it. And so I think there's sort of like a good crossover where the Note got out of control, and I also wanted to try and build some of my own apps. So I thought maybe I could do something here that makes this a bit easier for me. And so, yeah, that was kind of where it started. And then from there, it's grown to be more of, I guess, like a full-bodied recipe management app. Originally, it really was just the days of the week, and you could throw links against them, pretty much like the Note. But yeah, it's sort of expanded since then.
I'm curious about these. There's this common thread about a lot of origin stories of these apps, like single solo dev who kind of builds the thing. Usually, like scratch their own itch or something. They're trying to solve a very real problem that they have usually. What happens when you build that first version that probably meets your requirements? Like, all right, this does the thing I wanted to do. And then what? How do you how did that happen with Crouton? Like, at some point, you were like, all right, what else? How do I keep growing this? What was the motivation? How did that grow from like that initial MVP that you wanted just to build and stop using Notes to what it is today?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think like one thing that I found really helpful was I built it and I launched it to basically like no success. I think it got like a couple of downloads in the first few weeks. In the first year, there's really like sort of no users. But I was finding it very useful, and so I was using it pretty much every day. And so then I think as I was, going to cook the recipes, I'd be like, oh, it'd be really great if the app could just show me this. Or I would find maybe I'm often like going and like Googling, conversions between metric and imperial or other way around. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, what can I add to the app to kind of like improve the process while I'm cooking? And so a lot of the early sort of development was just around what could I do to continue to make it better for me to use it. And then thankfully after a year or two of that, it did start to gain a bit of traction. And so then I started getting a bit more, I guess, feedback from users, and you get feedback from people that you can tell have kind of the same vision. And so it's really encouraging to get sort of ideas from those people and sort of keep building it out from there.
In being like an Apple platform only app, I guess Apple itself kind of helps with the roadmap with every year, new OS, new features that users expect and want. And Crouton has always been, in my opinion, like a great citizen of the Apple platforms. Like maybe not every, but I'll say every major new feature. Say now widgets, now visionOS was the thing you were there. I think they won, right? I mean, with visionOS famously. But early in the year in June, the last WWDC, you won an Apple Design Award, which for a lot of us in the industry is like the ultimate recognition, right?
Totally.
I think even though it's a design award, of course, by default, if you're a designer, that's something you really want to one day maybe be in that category. But I think even if you're not a designer, I think that's like an ultimate recognition of like, this is a great product, right?
Definitely.
How was that? Like, how did that feel? Were you expecting it? Were you not? Like, what was that like? I want to live through you.
I mean, like you say, it's always been, I guess, a dream of like, you kind of put it on your bucket list, but it's not necessarily something you can like, work to. I mean, you can work towards it, but there's no guarantee that you'll win one. And so it's always just been something that kind of sits up here as like unachievable. And you watch other people with amazing apps win it, and you're like, yeah, obviously they deserve it. But I've always thought, like, it'd be nice, but probably not going to happen. And so to find out that I was first a finalist, was crazy and pretty, like the whole thing has been very surreal and hard to believe. And so to be a finalist, and then, I was a finalist with, Procreate and, the Arc app from the browser company. When I saw that, I was like, okay, well, it was nice to be a finalist, but I'm definitely not going to win. And to go beyond that and then actually to win the category, was crazy. And, I've been very, I guess, honored and kind of humbled by the experience. It's kind of, I think it's exciting to show that you can build like an app in your spare time and kind of go all the way, to win a design award. And so I'm hopeful that it's like encouraging to other people to stick at it and give things a go. But I still like, even though it's I better hold it up. Even though it's on my desk in front of me.
There it is.
It's still pretty hard to believe that my app, won a design award.
Amazing. See, for me, it's not really that hard to believe. When I found out, I think I texted you that same day. I was like, yep. I mean, I'm really happy for you, of course, but also I'm not surprised. Like you deserved it. I think you were just saying that like when you see other people win, you're like, well, yeah, of course that makes sense, but not me. Well, it's the same, for me.
Oh, that's nice to hear. Yeah, I guess we're all probably pretty, well, definitely like pretty critical of our own work, or we see the bits that could be better. So I think I find it easy to focus on those, and then when you get recognized for a design award, it's like. It's very validating, but also it's a bit intimidating.
And I'm curious, what was the impact of an ADA on Crouton now? Like, do you feel like, you know what, I've done it, like finished, I did it, or now I do feel maybe extra pressure, like to keep working on it. Like, how has it impacted like your work on Crouton now?
Yeah, it's a good question. Definitely, I think a mix of those things. I guess for one, it's kind of like the highest, like on my bucket list, probably like is like number one. So once you tick that off, it is a little bit like, well, where to next? In another sense, it's validating, I guess, of the product. And so it's kind of like, well, if I just keep doing what I've been doing, hopefully that'll just, carry on and continue to be successful. And also in terms of, I guess, the recognition that comes with winning the award and kind of the boost that you get from being featured on the App Store has been super helpful, and has given me the opportunity to kind of, go independent and be able to spend a lot more time on it, which is exciting. So I think I'll be able to tackle some bigger features and challenges that I've kind of put off.
Is this an exclusive that I'm hearing? So you went now full indie? You're working on Crouton full time now?
Exclusive.
Exclusive.
I think it might be. Might be exclusive, yeah. So I'm now full-time indie.
That's amazing. Congrats.
Thank you. Yeah.
I've been thinking about this. Like, there's a certain type of like breed of apps like these indie apps, usually the ones that like win awards, like ADAs. What do you think? Like maybe in your case, in Crouton, and how does it stand up against the competition? Because there's, I would say, quite a lot of competition in the space
Totally.
that Crouton is in. What do you feel like makes apps like Crouton stand out from the rest?
Yeah, I guess like what I've tried to do with Crouton is be a really good platform citizen, and also try and make the process or the workflows in the app as sort of simple and straightforward as possible. At this point, there's like a lot of things Crouton can do, but I'm hopeful that they're kind of all implemented in a way where you kind of open the app, you know exactly where you want to go, and only the bits that you care about sort of are obvious, and other things that maybe are less useful to you kind of like fall into the background. And so, yeah, I think that focus on hopefully simplicity, and then also I think being available on like all of Apple's platforms is also quite helpful, in terms of getting on Apple's radar, being a good platform citizen and making use of new technologies.
Yeah.
I think is helpful. But it's also important not to just, use the new technologies for the sake of it. I think I've been fortunate with Crouton where a lot of the new stuff Apple have introduced over the last few years, like live activities, really kind of like play nicely into Crouton's features.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good point. Yeah. I see, like, Crouton is an app that feels very human. I know it's this at this point it's a buzzword, but like it feels personal. With some other apps, like with bigger teams trying to reach a bigger audience, it feels like they're trying to design for everyone, and then that ends up feeling like it's not designed for me, like for no one really.
Sure. Yeah.
And Crouton is like the opposite of that.
I think the main one thing I've found is, I guess, to like stay opinionated, and like once you do get a user base, you will get like a lot of feedback, and it could be quite easy to kind of take all of that and implement all of it. Because like, well, if I add that, this person's going to use it, and if I add that, all these people are going to use it. But it's important to have a clear direction of what you think the app is, and stick to that as much as you can. And sometimes that means making decisions or doing things in a certain way that some people just aren't going to like. But luckily it is a crowded space, and so there's kind of it's kind of an app for everyone, and I think you're better off having your own lane and understanding what that is. And then that way you, I think, hopefully appeal strongly to a group of people, and then maybe less so to others. But I think, yeah, I found that to be quite helpful.
Stay true to your own opinions, I guess.
Yeah, and don't like stress about needing to add every feature request that you get. I still struggle with that a bit, but I think I'm getting better at kind of just being okay with saying no.
Well, it's working. Good job. Keep doing. Keep saying no. I want to talk a little bit about like indie devs. It's a fascinating breed of people. Because it's they cover such a wide surface area of responsibilities, and like design, development, marketing, communications, admin stuff. There's like so much, right? And I'm not just saying like it has to be a solo developer, maybe even like in small teams, but it's fascinating. And a lot of times, like some of the people like I'm talking to in this series, they're not necessarily like a designer per se. Maybe like you mentioned, you started by writing code, building coding apps. In this like developer designer spectrum, like where do you feel like you're the most comfortable in?
That's a good question.
What's the sweet spot?
Well, so before I did a computer science degree at university, but before I did that, I thought I was going to go more into the graphic design path. That was something I really started enjoying during high school. But I've always been like pretty big into technology and Apple products, and so my dad suggested, why don't I look at doing software development and kind of bringing the two together. And so I think I kind of came into technology through the design path. Even though when I first started, my design skills weren't particularly good. That was the area that I was interested in terms of like building interfaces that are nice to use. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. So I think I probably am maybe like somewhere in the middle. I definitely I like problem solving, and so like coding and problem solving I enjoy, but I think I care more about the user experience that comes as a result of those things than sort of like coding for coding's sake. So probably like more towards the design end, I would say.
Fascinating. I mean, I can see that, but then if you're, more on the designer spectrum, when stuff like Vision Pro is announced and a whole new way of thinking about software, although I think with like Vision Pro, like visionOS 1.0, it's like a gentle introduction. I think to spatial is like, yeah, you can do Windows. Don't worry about it. You know,
Relax.
like if you want to worry about it, you can. But but Crouton, I think, was like what Apple really wanted to see. It's like an existing app being ported, to this new platform, not reimagined, but like also don't just do like the iPad version. Like think a little bit about like how can you, embrace the spatialness of it. And Joanna Stern, right? Video. You got a lot of buzz. That was amazing. Like, yes,
that was a whole
you
thing.
nailed it with the timers on the pans.
That was crazy.
So how, like, as someone who also dabbled in, just looked into visionOS a little bit, both as a developer and as a designer, it's tricky. Like, it feels like a lot of your skill set, it's useless. Like, it doesn't really work here. How was that for you? Like, both maybe as a designer and also as a developer, like that, it was a lot of new stuff. Even just like using the tools, like Sketch and Xcode and the things you were using before. How was that transition?
Yeah, it was a pretty interesting experience. The SDK didn't actually come out for a few weeks after the event, but I was pretty keen. Like already I was thinking about, how Crouton could look. So the first thing I actually did use was Sketch to kind of do some mock-ups of how I thought Crouton could look, which was interesting because visionOS relies kind of a lot on the backgrounds and sort of the blurred glass materials, and so you're spending a lot more time, at least then in Sketch, kind of building the glass materials, which you're just going to get like for free once you start developing in SwiftUI. So that was kind of interesting to basically just start designing a completely new like design paradigm, especially when you're used to just kind of having all like the iOS symbols, and I'd gotten very comfortable, I think, with the way iOS sort of does things, and so could pretty quickly build out a UI. But then having to learn, how does visionOS handle this and handle that? All of that was quite a lot to understand, and especially at that time, you couldn't even really see that many of the system apps to see how Apple were doing it. So
right,
it's interesting. Then the SDK came out, and so that was good. I could finally get Crouton running. And I guess, the first part was just like, okay, I need to get it to at least work, so that it can run and you can do all the things that you can do on the other platforms, which took like quite a bit of time, even just to get that going. But then like, I guess like you say, once that's done, it's like, okay, what can I actually do on this platform that's going to make it new and like worth putting on Vision Pro as opposed to just picking up your phone. And so that was where I was, starting to think about like the timers in the kitchen, and I think like you're right. It's kind of like a different muscle because you're kind of exercising like, what can I do in physical space with this that would be interesting, rather than like, what can I show on a 2D screen? It's like a completely different kind of thought process. I think maybe like a similar vein is like, I'm always thinking, what can I do to help make cooking easier? What kind of information do you want to know very quickly that I can show you? And so like in Crouton on Vision Pro, you can, when it mentions some dimensions of a tray, like a 12 by 12 inch tray, you can just tap on that, and then it will project like in your space, basically like that size. So you can just look at it and be like, oh, I have a tray that's that big, and go grab it, as opposed to doing like the mental kind of, how big is like 12 inches and trying to figure it out. And so
I remember you were doing something pretty clever for the screenshots. You were like taking screenshots on device, but with a photo as a background, so that you could then on Sketch put actual screenshot. What was that like?
Yeah, that was a whole thing. So I don't know what your experience has been, but well, actually, so two things. I guess when we were launching on the App Store, the device still wasn't available, so you had to do it all in the simulator, which is actually easier. It's easier to do screenshots in the simulator, but the problem is you then are stuck with Apple's, what do you call them? Basically, like the kitchen or the environments that like the museum that they've got built in, and so if you do that, then your screenshots look pretty similar to all the other apps on the App Store. So I wanted to do something that would at least look, quite specific. But because visionOS uses the glass interface where you can see the sort of the background through it, in order to get around that, I basically had the picture that I wanted to be my background. I loaded that into the simulator, into the Photos app, and then just blew that up really big, put it behind my Crouton window, so that I got the right coloring. Then I took the screenshot, but then you still had this like weirdness around my window where you could see like half of the Apple's environment, the Photos app, and then Crouton. So I then took that into Sketch and then masked around my window and then dropped in the photo again behind it. And so then that kind of gives you the finished image.
Amazing.
It's very
That
awkward.
was so clever. It was like, oh, now we're using techniques from like the 50s of movie making with backdrops, right?
Totally.
You load a picture as the backdrop.
I'm cutting around my film and sticking it onto something else.
Yes. That was amazing. All right. I would love to ask you like your journey with Sketch. Like how did that start? How long have you been using it? Like how did you find out about it? Why Sketch? Right? Well,
yeah, so the job I got out of uni as a junior iOS developer, they were using Sketch to do all their design work. So that was basically when I started there, that was what all their designs were in. So it's just the tool I started using. And then I think like prior to that, I'd been using Photoshop for a lot of design work, which like works pretty well. I guess not really designed for that necessarily, but it works. Mm-hmm. And so coming to Sketch was kind of a breath of fresh air because it was a design tool. So all the things you wanted to do were just there and just worked the way you wanted them to. And also it's a very nice like native Mac app. So I kind of like clicked with it pretty quickly and I've just been using it ever since. So then, I was using it at work. And then when I started doing Crouton and needed to build out sort of assets and things, it just seemed like an obvious choice.
Growing up especially in the beginning of my career and following all my design heroes on Twitter and whatever, like I always wanted to know how they use Sketch. Like how big is your window? Like just little things. I think like sharing your workflow, like your desk or something, your workspace is like a popular type of content. Mm-hmm. But people don't share like their actual like screen, like how to use. So
it's easy.
I want to start a segment here. Yeah. If you're comfortable, would you mind sharing your screen and showing us like how you use Sketch?
Sure.
I'd love to see.
So it might turn into a roast, but we'll see.
What kind of monitor are you using?
This is a studio display.
Cool. So 27-inch 5K. You use Sketch maximized. Yeah.
Full pretty
screen.
much always full screen. I think I use most apps full screen. I'm not really much into kind of having lots of things on the go.
Interesting. Fascinating. You're the opposite of John Siracusa and all the windows. You're like, no,
true.
Just the one. Amazing. Okay, in dark mode, is that your go-to appearance?
Yeah, always dark mode. Yeah, sometimes I put it into light mode and then I forget that other people use their computer like that.
All right, so looking at this, I see rulers are on.
You got to have the rulers so that you can check that things line up.
Holy mother of pages. Look at that. Yeah, so many pages.
I think, I didn't mean to click that. I think a few of these could be deleted. Let me go back to there.
So how do you usually like navigate this? How do you structure? Because I see I think there's like this unspoken unspoken maybe guide, whatever. Designers usually do like pick a direction, but they go like one direction, like duplicate, work, and then at some point, like if it's like a smaller variant of the same, you go down, and then right. Like there's this axis of mock-ups that I think no one talks about. It's not documented, but I think we all do it.
It's just
I
built
see
in.
something like this. So how do you usually just like go about and navigate and structure these artworks?
Yeah, I mean, so this one is just all kind of like the different icons. I guess I've gone, it's kind of like a diagonal progression. So these are like Crouton's old icons. It used to just be this blue one here, the cloche. A lot of people don't know what a cloche is, so they would mistake this for other things, which is why I sort out different options.
Okay, so I don't know what a cloche is. Like, I don't know the word. Looking at that, if I didn't think about it, and I didn't, I thought it was like a bell.
A bell? Yeah, see? So
is the cloche like the thing you do, like the shut-on, like the little lid on top of the
like where the waiter comes and they lift the big lid off.
Cloche. Is that big in New Zealand?
I don't know that I've ever seen a cloche in person. You just hear about them.
Yeah, we're not fancy like that. No, a cloche.
It's definitely not how I serve up dinner every night, but...
Yeah, well, if you cook with Crouton, I'm sure it'll be cloche-worthy recipes. Yeah.
Maybe I should do a Crouton-branded cloche, like limited edition.
Yeah, that's not popular swag. I don't do that often. No. I saw you did the apron, right?
Yeah,
where can I get
was
one?
A lot of fun.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, my supplier actually announced that they were shutting down a couple of weeks ago, which is devastating. So
what did you do, Devin?
I bought all the aprons.
This Crouton gig really got us under. Cool. Okay.
So I've kind of worked my way down here.
Yeah.
So we moved to this folder kind of layout, and then that kind of progressed down here, which maybe you can see in this lot. There's like a bit more shading. These are a bit more flat, and then as we move down here, we've got a bit more shading. This is sort of where we're at now, and then I've got some extras in here for iOS 18 for those new icon layouts with the dark mode and the tinting. They look a bit funky here because they're missing the backgrounds.
You knew that, right? Yeah. How has that been, like that experience of designing icons for tint mode or whatever they call it?
Yeah, I think the dark mode one was not too bad, but definitely the tint one, I took me a lot of time of back and forwards, just like tweaking kind of like the opacity of my elements, and there's a bunch of shadows which once you start applying the tinting just look a bit sort of weird, and so yeah, it was like a lot of back and forth. I'm not sure that I'm going to use the tinting icons, but I'm reasonably happy with how the Crouton one looks if other people decide to do that.
Yeah. It's not aspirational because I could just do it, but it's like, oh yeah, I wish I was that type of person. Like my home screen, even now, it's like, now you can put icons anywhere in the grid. And I'm like, yeah, that's nice that I can, but like I'll keep it dark background because that's what I use in my iPhone 3G. Like, whatever.
Yeah,
anyway,
very much
I'm
the
old.
same. It's like very simple.
Yeah.
Even widgets I don't use a whole lot of. It's just I kind of just want to get to the apps.
All of these are like icons you're shipping, or do you, like, when you need to iterate, do you duplicate, like have a separate artboard for small tweaks, or do you iterate on the same one until you find something you like?
Yeah, it's a bit haphazard. I normally just kind of iterate on the same one. If I get it to a certain point, then I might kind of like duplicate it and then tweak it a bit from there. There's definitely not too much structure to it. Like most of these ones here are actually shipping.
Yeah.
Except for like a couple of them are not there. So this is like most of what I do in Sketch is sort of more of like the asset design rather than mocking up particular screens. I generally do most of that just kind of in development, sort of build it, see how it feels, and keep tweaking it till it doesn't feel terrible. But then I use Sketch, like I've got all of my kind of like asset like glyphs in here. Some broccoli for some reason. I don't know why that's there. Just to keep me company.
Hey, try designing a broccoli icon.
Yeah. Would you believe me if I said this was all layers? It's not, but That would be cool.
That would be cool. That would be a good plot twist. Yeah, I mean, yeah, we had a 1-layer challenge not that long ago, and some people made some crazy stuff. So I would be very impressed. But yeah, no. Okay. Is there anything you would like me to ask you? Anything you'd like to talk about?
I always find that like a tough question because it's like,
where do you see yourself in
in 5 years? It's probably washed up. Yeah. I do feel like, like I've won the design award. It can only be downhill, really. Like,
you peaked.
Yeah.
No. Hey man, you gotta go for that second 88.
Do the Ryan. Get to
do the Ryan.
Yeah.
Hey, do a Ryan
special. Yeah. That's pretty hard to pull off. I don't think I've got it in me.
I feel like it's easier than the first one. Right?
Is that what they say? The second idea is easier.
Just keep at it. Okay, well, Devin, thank you so much for the chat. This is lovely. Thanks for sharing your screen and letting me nerd out and see how other people use their computers in Sketch. Yeah, where can people follow you on the internets and like keep up to date on what you've been doing? Yeah, I'm on Twitter still, but also Mastodon. I enjoy the vibes there are pretty good. My handle is just me Devin, so I'm on all of them, but I'm probably the most relaxed on Mastodon. And yeah, if you want to if you like cooking and you want an easy way to store your recipes, then Crouton is a pretty good way to do that, I've heard. And even if you hate cooking, you should download it just to spite. Download it and see what an Apple Design Award winning app looks like. Thank you so much, Devin. I'll talk to you soon. Sounds good.